So you're in high school biology, and that textbook they gave you could probably stop a door, right? But does it actually give you the game plan? We're going to fix that today. We're breaking down high school bio using the official New York State standards as our roadmap. Think of this as the real deal guide to understanding, well, everything.
Here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll talk about how to think like a scientist. Then, we're going to zoom way into the code that makes you, you. From there, we'll zoom out to see how life gets its power, how it's all connected in this giant web, and the one massive idea that explains all of it. And finally, we'll bring it all back home. Let's do this.
All right, first up, let's get one thing straight. Science class isn't about memorizing a million random facts to spit out on a test. Nah, it's more like a gym for your brain. The real goal is to learn how to think.
So you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, so what are we actually going to be doing all year? What's the point of all these labs? Well, the state standards actually lay it all out for us, and it all comes down to a few core skills.
Think of these as your new science superpowers. Seriously, this is what scientists actually do. It's not about knowing all the answers. It's about asking good questions, making models to figure things out, planning ways to test your ideas, and, this is the big one, arguing your point using solid evidence. This is the toolkit you're building.
All right, we've got the mindset down. Now, let's get personal, like really personal. We're going to zoom all the way in and start with the instruction manual for life itself. And yeah, that manual is inside every single one of your cells.
It all starts here, with DNA. You can think of it as the ultimate source code for building a person. Every one of your cells has a copy. And little sections of that code, called genes, are basically recipes for making things called proteins.
So how does a string of code turn into you? Well, it's a pretty slick process. The main DNA blueprint stays safe. A little copy of one recipe, one gene, gets made. That copy, that message, floats out into the cell, and it's read like a ticker tape. And as it's read, a protein gets built. These proteins are the little machines that do everything. Build your muscles, fight off germs, you name it.
So with all this crazy stuff happening inside you 24/7, how do you stay, stable? The word for that is homeostasis. It's your body's automatic balancing act. Think about it. Whether you're walking around Queens in February when it's freezing or in the middle of a July heat wave, your body temperature stays right around 98.6. That's homeostasis in action.
And this is a huge deal for your health, because when that internal balance gets thrown off, when homeostasis fails, well, that's pretty much what disease is. It's your body's systems getting out of whack.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint for life. But where does the energy to actually run the whole operation come from? To figure that out, we got to zoom back out and look at the planet's power grid.
It really comes down to these two things, and they're pretty much opposites. You've got photosynthesis, that's what plants do. They take sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, and they store that sun energy in sugar. Then you've got cellular respiration. That's what we do. We eat the sugar, breathe in oxygen, and our cells break it all down to release that energy. One process charges the battery, the other one uses the power. And get this, it's not just about energy. This whole cycle of plants taking in CO2 and us breathing it out, that's a huge piece of the Earth's carbon cycle. It's how the actual building block of life, carbon, moves between the air and every living thing on the planet.
Okay, so we have the blueprint, and we have the energy. Now what happens when you throw all these living things together in one place, like Flushing Meadows Park? Well, it gets complicated, and it gets competitive, fast.
This brings us to a super important rule in nature called carrying capacity. The idea is pretty simple, actually. Any place, a fish tank, a forest, an entire city, only has so much stuff to go around, so it can only support a certain number of living things. There's a limit.
And what sets that limit? It's a mix of two things. First, you've got biotic factors. That's the living stuff. Things like other animals competing for the same food, predators trying to eat you, and diseases. Then you have abiotic factors, the non-living stuff, like how much space there is, if there's enough water, sunlight, and just the general climate. All that stuff puts the pressure on.
Now here's where it gets real. When those conditions change, say pollution gets into a river or the climate gets warmer, that whole balance can get thrown way off. An ecosystem that was perfectly fine for thousands of years can get disrupted, and that puts a lot of species in serious trouble.
And now for the final zoom out. We've talked about how individuals are built, how energy flows, and how creatures interact. But how did we get all these millions of different kinds of life in the first place? This brings us to the biggest, most powerful idea in all of biology: evolution. The engine that drives evolution is called natural selection, and when you break it down, it's just a simple, logical recipe. First, way more babies are born than can ever survive. Second, every individual is a little bit different from its brothers and sisters because of their genes. Third, they all have to compete for food, space, and everything else. And fourth, the ones with traits that give them a little bit of an edge are more likely to survive, have kids, and pass on those winning traits. That's it. Repeat that for millions of years, and you get everything from bacteria to blue whales.
And how do we know this is for real? Because the evidence is everywhere. We see it when we compare the DNA of a human and a chimp and see how similar it is. We see it in the bones of a human arm, a bat's wing, and a whale's flipper. They all have the same basic layout. All the clues point to one big family tree of life.
Okay, so let's connect this back to what we said about ecosystems. We know the world isn't static, right? Things are always changing. So, what happens when the environment changes?
The result is pretty simple and pretty brutal. A species has to adapt or it risks getting wiped out. If the environment changes, some individuals might have the right traits to handle it. They survive, they pass on those traits, and the species adapts over time. But if the change is too fast and nobody has the right gear for the new world, game over. Extinction. Okay, deep breath. We've gone from the DNA inside your own cells to the entire history of life on Earth. So let's bring it all back home. Why should any of this matter to you right here, right now?
It matters because we are not separate from this stuff. We're a part of it. We depend on this incredibly complex web of life for the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. Here's how the official standards put it. Sustaining biodiversity is essential to supporting and enhancing life on Earth. That's not just some textbook line. It means keeping this whole thing running is literally our life support system.
So there it is, the official, unofficial guide. This isn't just stuff you have to memorize for a class. It's a whole new way of seeing the world and your place in it. You now have the roadmap to understand how life works. So the only question left is, what are you going to do with it?